but it's so crucial that you have the piece of content as like your lesson for the day. We're not interested in you sharing other people's ideas. Don't reshare posts. Don't put someone else in front of you. We're following you. You're our thought leader. Write something useful. But let that be the start point for the conversation, not the whole experience, writing a post. It's the start point, and then it's for us to use that as our in to begin engaging with people.
Welcome to Life Designers, where we hold open discussions about professional resilience, adapting to change, and how to pivot careers confidently. Through the art of conversation, we will learn from the real-world experience of top leaders in HR, business, and entrepreneurship to explore powerful ideas at the intersection of career development, personal growth, and lifestyle design. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life Designers. If you are new to the show and don't know me, my name is Jesse Sieff. I am your host. I'm the founder of Sieff Studios, and we're going to be welcoming some incredible people. And first, to kick us off, is Richard Moore. Richard is an entrepreneur who started creating content on LinkedIn in January 2022, and he went on to build an audience of over 100,000 followers in just 2 years. Today, he's working with world-class founders and helping them share their story, grow their audience, and build their brand on LinkedIn, which coincidentally is how I met Richard. We were on a LinkedIn Live. He was doing some sales training, and we kind of messaged back and forth, and he was gracious enough to agree to be on the show. So I am delighted that we had our conversation. And in this episode, Richard and I are exploring how to really focus on building real, meaningful connections online, especially when you're reaching out to people we don't really know yet. And the key idea here is that people are more likely to respond and build trust when they feel seen and respected, not whenever they feel sold to. So it's that cringy selling feeling that people are so afraid of. And, it's how to just not make that a factor, right? Instead of rushing to make a sale, it's more effective if we just notice small actions people take, being observant, like liking a post, viewing a profile, and using that as a chance to start a friendly, thoughtful conversation. And with that said, without further ado, I hope you enjoy this conversation with me and Richard Moore. Richard, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I had discovered you through Chris Doe's podcast on the future. So
Yes.
For anyone listening, that's an incredible resource, an incredible wealth of information. For people that may not know you or have the context that I do, could you just please do a brief intro?
Sure. Thank you very much. So I'm Richard Moore, and I'm normally a podcast guest on Chris Doe's stuff. That's it.
Yes.
No, I'm joking. So basically, my thing is helping people convert. That's like the focus. I had 10 years in corporate, always in sales roles. So if you go back 21 years ago, it was selling internet marketing, but in corporate sense. So always been with the internet stuff and virtual conferences and so on. And eventually I was head of sales and then a director position as sales director for a recruitment house. 2014, I pivoted out and started to run my own thing. And since then, it's still been like this focus on selling, but helping people who are trying to do it online. So now instead of cold outreach, it's the attraction game. And now 7 years, it's been a focus of doing that with LinkedIn as my vehicle. And so I specifically look at the nuance and behavior and choice of wording and language that's required to get someone who's maybe a cool passive audience member to then start feeling like maybe you're right for them and they want to maybe get in touch and so on. And then what do you say to not scare them off in frankly a world where everyone is being massively sold to all the time? So essentially how to not be irritating and get the outcome we're after. So I really enjoy that because you can probably sense it's less salesy in the classic sense, but it's much more understanding behavior and kind of that communication piece, So I run all the obvious, coaching, there's a community or two, and but the focus is just like where people need that help. That's the bit. That's kind of my sweet spot.
Well, I have a lot of respect for that because a lot of people have a strong aversion to selling. And for context, we're going to be talking about different versions of that, and everyone that is investing time, effort, creativity, resources into content marketing as a channel, each of them have a respective pipeline, whether it's for candidates, for hiring opportunities and careers, or it's for clients, customers, people that are buying products and services. So there's a big overlap between the practices and the behaviors and the structure that goes into making that effective.
Yes.
So where do you want to start with that? And maybe talking about like, what are the reasons to even consider doing content marketing in the first place?
Yeah, I think a really good place to start is how to map to the outcome of the right people seeing you in the right way, because that is the step before getting our conversion. Now, conversion, of course, needs to be defined, because conversion might be applicants for a new job we're going to hire for, or conversion might be someone onto an email list, because that conveyor belt to, for instance, hire them might be further downstream, or indeed it might be just to buy a thing, because hey, some of us need to sell for a living as well. But I think the access point should be saying to ourselves, and I know I'm in a minority when I say this, but I'm right, Jesse, when I say that it's important to recognize that when you go online for more than a few minutes, you start realizing that the mainstream narrative is that the Holy Grail is following and impressions and trying to go viral, and you see words like reach and growth. And what it is it's all about volume. And obviously we need to turn over enough stones to find the thing we're after. But much like with, and I'm going to use this analogy a lot, much like with hiring for a role, I could get literally anyone, so now hundreds of applicants for one role, or I could be more sniper like. I could be more careful and discerning in how I talk about what I'm doing and where I put it and so on, so I have fewer shots at goal but then more accuracy. And so I'm massive, and this is my sales director background, if you like, I'm massive on intentional actions that get us the outputs we're after, and basically removing any fluff. And I think what we've got to be very mindful of at the start is that if we're going to choose to use the content play, which is a beautiful, generous way to scale our voice, it's a very generous algorithm there, it really matters that we're careful, that we are trying to speak to a specific set of people in a specific way. And that has to be our goal. It's so seductive to chase volume, and volume can help a bit as you're trying to ideate and understand and evolve your message, but competency and accuracy is the game. And so what we need to say to ourselves is, who are we trying to reach? Like, what are the kind of people? And then crucially, we need to say to ourselves, what kind of thing would they be thinking right now? So I call this symptoms. And our content must speak to an awareness that we have of what they're feeling, experiencing, and going through right now. Because if we meet them where they are, symptoms being an inner dialogue, so things they say to themselves, feelings they've got, emotions they have about a situation or a frustration, they will feel seen. And their response will be, that's exactly how I see things. At that point, we now have access to them. There's this kind of connection of a sort that can begin and essentially give us this gift of the beginnings of a conversation, and then we can take it from there. And I'm doing this warning at the start because the alternative is just to try and spam out our stuff about us and assume that, cliches like consistency and just keep going and just keep doing it is what's going to get us a result. And then maybe we deploy more time into this and we focus instead on just trying to get as many people to look at it. But I'll kind of end this point by saying it's really dangerous doing that, because what happens often is by sheer focus on volume, which is relatively really easy to do. It's not hard to get people to look at your stuff if you know what to do or go on a course or learn about it. You can output a false positive in the form of lots of rapturous applause from all the wrong people engaging with your content, and on occasion, just by sheer luck of volume, a bit like buying loads of lottery tickets, you get the occasional person step forward and go, hey, despite the noise and fluff, I kind of sold myself, can I step forward? And so we have this feeling of, hey, it works, but it doesn't. That was luck. You know, making money is not done by buying lottery tickets and using luck as a strategy. Making money is done a bit more deliberately than that. And it's the same principle I'm trying to kind of articulate there. So it's really crucial we recognize that what I'm describing here isn't the route to high level of influence and fame necessarily, but it's definitely the route to the right people seeing us in the right way, because that's the point. Otherwise, there is an element of mucking around online and a lot of superfluous use of our time, isn't there?
100%. And yeah, you perfectly articulated that, because you will get some false positives if you lean into the volume scatter macro approach, which a lot of people default to as their idea of an influencer, right? Just being an influencer means just having a large following, having a large number of impressions, and by sheer volume, the right people will just manifest themselves into your inner circle or your ecosystem.
Yeah, but it's never proportionate. That's the point. Never proportionate. And you get million follower plus LinkedIn famous people who don't make, relatively speaking, nearly as much money as people who are much more deliberate with 1,000th of that following. And I think that it's great. It's not about size to start with. It's always best to be better first and scale that. So as it's just a perfect way to put it. Instead of more first, because you're scaling incompetency and inaccuracy, it's better first and then scale that. So more comes after better, if that makes sense.
100%. And in my head, I'm thinking of like an upside down pyramid.
Yeah.
Right. You start out very narrow and specific, and then as you build and get that evidence that what you're doing is working and you're finding the right people, you do have alignment, then you can scale out as you grow.
And it's a reason why, like, I'm not the biggest guy online on LinkedIn, despite me being at it every day for 7 years. And it's the reason why I don't go viral ever, because I'm not a growth hacker. And so I'm not chasing that stuff. And it's a whole other conversation about what it represents if you choose to do that. What's important here is, by being really intentional, if you can be willing to get that kind of monkey off your back and sacrifice not being super famous, suddenly it doesn't really matter so much, because you're actually getting the outcome you originally were here for, which is conversion of the sort that means it feels like a meaningful use of your time, rather than this kind of hamster wheel with the occasional bone being thrown at you, but you don't know how you managed to get it.
Yes, indeed. And I want to go back and just underline a few things that you mentioned, and looking at the ways that we can measure how we're effective, starting from awareness, right? That's what we're talking about as the generalized approach, just getting things seen, doing lots of volume. Those are your awareness metrics. You know, people can know about you. They may or may not be the right people. Then you have engagement metrics, right? People are aware of you. How relevant is your content to them? And how inclined and how aligned are they with what you have to say? And I love that you also you used the word connection at some point as a derivative of the symptoms and the feelings of those people, the reasons why they engage. And connection is a word that's used very loosely on LinkedIn, especially. So I love that you peeled back the layers there. And there actually is a deep psychological and emotional component to what we're trying to communicate to people.
Yeah,
and there's a big difference between what you're saying and what you're communicating.
Definitely. Definitely.
So with that, of course, whenever people engage, they must have a good reason. And then you convert after you have had some type of interaction or conversation. And I know you speak a lot on that too. It's like, how can you nurture those conversations and be in a position where you're receiving inbound communications from the right people? So maybe talk about that transition from engaged, interested to having a conversion conversation.
Yeah. So our kind of big takeaway to help frame this is that we need to recognize that getting a response from someone that you don't really know, so that the engagement, the connection is a cold one, or a cool one at least at this point, is down to being reasonable. That's it. Like asking reasonable things. And reasonable is conscious of the context of our times. It's 2025. We all know what it looks like to be sold to. We all know that someone has an agenda if their first message to us is some feigned interest in caring about us and then a link to something. So we know that that's not going to work. But the point of getting people to step forward in a form, so it might be just looking at us, but it might be writing something or whatever, is to give us a reason to get in touch that's reasonable. So when you imagine observing someone who is potentially a buyer and completely cold with no prior interaction of any sort, they certainly don't know who you are, reaching out to them saying, hi, I think we could help you, that's going to rub them up the wrong way. And the fact you're unknown is where there's going to be a lot of barriers built up. But if they've done something, even something minute in your direction, that's an in, which is great leverage for a reason why they should answer a first message along the lines of, hi, I saw you did a thing. Thanks so much. Hope you're okay. It's a reason to get in touch. And the reason why this is important, if you look at the science of why someone would respond to a message when everyone's messaging them all the time, it comes down to two things. One, sure, you have to be relevant. There has to be some relevance and reason there. Like there has to be some kind of broad reason why you're crossing paths. Otherwise, it's weird. But the problem is, the second part is there's this omission of it, which is leverage. And that's a good reason why they should respond. So essentially what we're doing, just to be tactical, is we need to recognize that the message we send this person for commenting on our post, voting on our post, or even much more likely, because buyers tend to be lurkers, exhibiting some curiosity, clicking on our name to look at our profile, to like, who's this guy, and then disappearing. So now I've got a profile view I can respond to instead. Our first message should be acknowledging that they did that thing, saying hi, and perhaps even asking them what made them decide to. It's entirely reasonable. Hi, I saw you came into the shop. Thanks so much for coming into the shop. What made you decide to do that? Oh, I saw this thing. So the crucial tip here is to be specific. I call it the specific question. Be specific about the thing they did, and we're going to lock in on that thing. So if they liked our post, hi Jesse, I just want to say thank you so much for liking my post. It's a relevant message to send. Now the leverage is, I saw you liked it though, but I would love to know what made you decide to do that. It's an entirely reasonable question. Oh, but I want to sell them. Oh, but won't this take time? Oh, but this is really inefficient. Sure, but it's actually not inefficient because it's effective. And so you can send 1 million messages that don't get you anywhere, or you can send like 5 a day like this and start deep conversations and get sales. And that's the big fat difference. It's way more important to be effective than to try and just be efficient and send out hey, I saw you looked at my thing, says your automated response. Thanks so much for that. You're probably interested in this and this and this. What they never asked, that's the thing.
Right. And it's dangerous whenever you start to be quick for the sale, because that signals a bit of desperation, right? You're not willing to let the relationship mature and grow. And that doesn't help your positioning. That doesn't help your leverage. And if the reason that you're reaching out to that person is like, okay, I found some common ground, we live in the same country, or whatever it is, it's like, I saw that you work in this industry and that you have this role. That's public information, right? That's not a reason or relevance, but I love
and everyone else will use it. Like, hey, congrats on your podcast. I'd love to connect. It's like, well, that's fine, but like, come on, do better. There's something else. And I think, I've been training salespeople for 2 decades, and the thing that stands out really the most is the people who really win are the ones who understand there's a massive difference in selling at someone compared to helping them buy. There's a big difference. And the way to understand this, like what it really is it's not selling the way you want to sell. The way you want to sell is, hi, I saw you got in touch. Would you buy my thing? And they say yes. But that doesn't work. What we need to do instead is sell the way that they would like to buy. And that takes more time, and you have to make them feel a bit more special, and you have to be a bit more interested, but that's what gets the result. Sorry. Especially for high ticket stuff. And so, like when I was in recruiting, we were putting in roles that might, the fees were like, I remember one of our guys got a £750,000 in fees. Like, well, that was the top one, but like it might be 50 or 100 grand or 200 grand fees. These are massive chunky roles. And it wasn't like working as many as we could. It was flying out to meet people. It was like truly like meeting them, having lunch and giving them that attention and knowing all about them, like, the name of their dog kind of thing. Like, it goes that far. And I just think it's so important. If we expect someone to want to feel so inclined to give us, £8,000 a month in retainer fees, for instance, or whatever it might be, well, then shouldn't we put out as well? So it's helping them buy, sure, but meeting them and selling them to them in a way that they would want to receive us. No one wants to be sold at, but they do like to be felt, feel special. And so there needs to be this kind of focus on showing you're interested, because you are, aren't you? And if we just demonstrate, because this is the people who do best, that we actually care and are actually interested rather than just want their money. Getting their money is a secondary perk of being genuinely interested in such people as those you're engaging with or the industry you're in. And it's a perk for actually spending some time with people. And it's never been any different, and it will never change as long as humans buy from humans. So we always people think they're good with empathy. The big takeaway here is, how probably would they want to receive me? What really would work for them? Not save me time so it's a replicable process, because that could be efficient. Like, you get there in the end. What matters first is, how would that person want to receive me? They barely know me. It's none of their business what challenges they've got right now. Oh, sorry, it's none of my business, rather. So I can't ask that stuff. You earn the right to ask more probing questions. You start by being human. And you ask them, you got them in with the thing they did. And then just, it sounds ridiculous, almost, this advice, but like, just be normal. Seriously. Like, what would you say literally to their face? So say that, Like, when we first interacted before recording, there was no like hyper formality, like it was some kind of presentation, because that would be weird. We wouldn't connect. We just talked normally, and that's like what we want to do. And it's the same kind of principles here, because it's humans, that human needs something that more than just the functional, because they're not a robot. Simple as that.
Hey folks, I wanted to jump on to share a quick word about Mill Mentor by Service to Success. Look, if you're a transitioning service member, a veteran, mill spouse, or federal employee who's preparing for your next career move, please don't do it alone. MillMentor.com gives you access to hundreds of incredible mentors who actually understand the nuances of your industry. They can speak from experience, give you custom advice, make warm intros, and a whole lot more. And the best part, it is 100% free. Mill Mentor is the on-demand mentorship network for the military community, and it's built by a team of veterans. Industry professionals can make a difference as mentors on their schedule, and job seekers can connect instantly on demand with unlimited mentors. Employers are also invited to join leading companies with free branded company pages to showcase your culture and commitment to military talent. Whether you're seeking talent or seeking a new career opportunity, go ahead and visit milmentor.com to learn more. That is milmentor.com. I'm so glad you brought up that dynamic of simply being normal and trying to ignore the fact that a lot of what we do is asynchronous. A lot of what we do is behind a screen, text-based, and that often creates a barrier in our imagination for the receiving end of that message. So I love that you mentioned, the difference between selling and helping, because that's exactly what people want. They want to make informed buying decisions. Isn't that what you would want?
Yes,
right?
exactly.
You would want
If
to
you
be in a
consider that
position.
point just there, think about that point just there, that's often the blind spot. Because what you've got is that very issue of people saying to themselves, well, I wouldn't fall for this rubbish, but maybe they're stupid. Maybe they'll fall for it. And it's like, treat them like you treat yourself. And I think you can apply this help them buy approach if we talk about talent managers and HR and so on, attracting great talent. Don't try and fill your role. Instead, try and help someone find this, help someone ideal find this role that you can, that can help them. It's about doing it from a buyer or talent centric perspective. Instead of filling my role because it's my mandate to do so, it's who could I help lift, or elevate their career by bringing them into this role that they maybe don't know about. And then you might argue, come on, it's the same thing. It really isn't. You're much more a facilitator for their agenda rather than them being a tool for yours.
Yes, and you mentioned the gravity of those decisions are proportionate to how empathetic and how willing you should be to nurture those relationships, fly to wherever it is they are, get to know them. And if they're about to make a massive life decision and the company is going to invest in this person, then I think you owe it to them to get to know them. You might be working with them for 20 years or more.
It's reasonable. I mean, ideally, everyone just buys their stuff and we don't have to work. I remember speaking to someone last year and they're like, I just don't want to do the calls, Richard. And I just, they wanted high ticket. They're like, I just want everyone to buy my stuff and leave me alone. I'm like, well, wouldn't we all? But you have to, it's called earning it. Otherwise, life would be no challenge. And so that's the reason why most people fail, is that they're not actually being empathetic at all. They're focusing massively on what they want to do, and they're viewing the individuals as just a massive numbers. Now, there are exceptions here. We should be balanced, because what we're really talking about is when it's smaller volumes that we need to be working with. Like, the smaller the volume that you need to engage with, because perhaps you have a very high ticket proposition, well, then of course the greater depth you give them. The greater volume, the more you can allow, fallout, which is why, for instance, if you're running ads, you can afford for 70% or 80% of literally hundreds of thousands of people to have no interest and get the ick, because you will see with volumes or scale of that big, of that size, you can get, conversions, and you're tweaking the knobs on things that make, palpable differences. But when it's incredibly small volumes for typically very high ticket things, talent acquisition, for instance, or deal making, it's just got to be a process that's much more tuned into what you're after.
Yeah, and there is such a difference with that too, because if you're running ads and you're going for mass volume, you have to be realistic with the attrition rate and your conversion rate. And also be willing to burn through a long list of leads, right? So you have to consider, what are the damages that you're doing to these people and these relationships if it's not a good fit for them. So, presumably we have those different positions that we look at, whether you're high ticket business owner, coach, consultant, agency owner, you have some type of service product solution that you're selling. That's one frame of mind, and I really appreciate you brought up the HR and talent acquisition viewpoint, because they don't really sell products or services necessarily. They're selling the idea of a lifestyle, right? They're selling a value proposition on behalf of the company, and it doesn't do them any good to push that vision onto the person, because it's a two-way street. So it really does benefit them to lean into the relationship and really, really listen and understand what's important to that person.
Yeah, because ultimately what they're doing is ideally the culture of their world is the thing that's the attractor rather than chasing. It attracts people. And if you consider businesses in those lists of, top 100 businesses to work with, there's a reason why. It's like I don't need to be told I should work at this company. I'd love it. It seems like a great place to work. And you're right. It's like you're giving out, you're kind of selling, like, but you're basically putting out there this culture that leads to a wonderful existence if you were to work with them. And I just think it's just important to recognize that matters more than you realize, because ultimately the person taking advantage of that opportunity is a human being with an existence beyond doing the work. And as we all know nowadays, you get a better result from someone as an employee if you've given them a wonderful world to work in. It's not just kind of just get people in the roles, because that's to treat them like numbers, and they only leave. So it's important to get that right at the start.
Yes, 100%. And, I guess a few more thoughts on that side of the ecosystem in the talent acquisition world. And it's not only about finding compatibility for the culture, but it's the hiring experience. And I'm going to pull from some recent research here. It's a 2025 report that came out from Good Time. And 55% of talent acquisition teams are now focused on improving the candidate experience. And that was comprised of, I think, 500 TA professionals. And the top 10% of them all had the highest candidate and applicant experience scores. So that it really does perfectly overlap with this idea of, understanding how empathetic can I be, and understanding what's important to that person. Because realistically, if you are in those high-end roles and you're looking for that one or two, maybe five people in the country that can fill that role, you want them to have the best experience possible, because it might be one of their friends that ends up getting the job. So you stand everything to gain from ensuring that you're meeting them where they are.
Totally. I remember there was a role we were hiring for once, and the applicants, we hired an S-Class Mercedes, like really pimp limo, to take them from wherever they lived to the interview. And you got these guys going like, this is really nice. I'm like, yeah, I want you in top. And I was there, I'd be there arriving, we're all in like tailored suits and everything. It was crazy.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like getting their ties straightened. I'm like, you're amazing at this kind of thing. Like, I'm their hype guy, and I make them feel like $1 million. But I was obviously a middleman, but it's important that companies recognize this. And it's just so common that company side, the response to this is like, yeah, but like, I just don't have time for that. Do you know what though? That's short-termist. You do have time for it. It's just, you think you don't. And what happens is you spend more time spaced over a longer period, having to then refill the hole because they leave, or spend more time with the wrong applicants. So it's the same principle, as I said, with content or with engaging with people. Go deep rather than broad, and you tend to find you get a better experience because you're giving more love to that individual and making them feel good about it. It presupposes, of course, that accuracy is already baked into this process, because what you can't do is give the absolute like red carpet treatment to completely the wrong people. So you need to make sure you're obviously tuning and iterating as you go. And otherwise you get this terrible outcome. Again, if you look at content and the conversion piece, you get people spending a lot of time because they think that, okay, they get it, that's what's needed, and they're willing to suck up more effort around each individual, but they're doing it with completely the wrong people.
Wow.
And I saw this for years in sales. You have people who are pitching a non-decision maker, And it's like, you're doing such a great job. You've trained so hard. You've prepared so well, but you're speaking to someone who doesn't make a decision. So like we have to get balance. You've got to get, good inputs at the top of the funnel as well.
Yes. I love the imagery of that example that you mentioned with the Mercedes, pulling up to the airport, the red carpet comes out, white glove, open the door, straighten the tie. So I want that to live in people's heads as a North Star. You're not going to be able to do that for everybody, and you definitely shouldn't do it for everybody.
No. When the budget allows, then it's nice to put out. But it's like, it's so interesting when they give you a retainer. It's like, cool, I'll put that in my back pocket. It's crazy. It's like, no, use some of it. And it's the same internally. If you look at managing talent internally, when I was a team manager, I got my wage, fine, and I got my commission, fine. I got an override on the team, okay, cool. But rather than like put it all in my pocket, I was using, from the word go, I was using it. I was like, right, if you do these things, then we get these things. And so I'd take them for lunch. Or I remember one thing, I was like, if you do this target in this quarter leading up to Christmas, I'll buy you all a Christmas present. What would you like? And I remember people saying, like, why can't I be on that team? Why does my manager not do that for me? And I know it's not huge, but the point is, just got to consider how they want to live, because then the returns are far greater for you. Again, it's just not being short-termist about it, and perhaps putting your hand in your pocket sometimes goes a long way.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And of course, there's some version of this that everyone can do at their level, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, when budget allows, go all out, make that person feel like royalty. But, bringing it back to maybe some of the tactics that recruiters, talent acquisition people, even, small business owners that are looking for talent, of course, they want to be able to do something similar. How can they improve what they're currently doing in their marketing strategy, and specifically with content? So what are some guiding principles for making people feel special, guiding them through their customer or candidate journey?
Yeah, so there's this saying, which is content is king, and it's completely wrong. It's not. Community is king. Well, actually, conversion is king. I'm going to use the C's, but that aside, we're not there yet. What's crucial is community is king. From the word go, I use the post as a device to interact with people, rather than the post being the be-all end-all. This is where people get it wrong. They're like, oh, my post did really well today. You mean it got lots of views? Well, that's missing the point. We're here for the interaction. So to answer your question, what we need to be saying to ourselves is, sure, a post, yes, it talks about the feelings they've got and it shows our awareness of them, but we should be deploying our time, not to try and get more reach or just to comment grind for hours on LinkedIn. We should be meeting these people. So it should be the DMs where we spend our time. Honestly, if people flipped the ratio of time they spent in comments with the amount of time they spent in DMs, they'd be fine. Because DMs are the one-on-one part. DMs are where the magic really happens. And of course, statistically, a lot of it won't go anywhere. But the point is that by you and I having an interaction, by me even bothering to thank you for liking a post, even with no further agenda, we're now having a conversation, and LinkedIn sees that. Guess whose post you see tomorrow? Mine again. And so, it's so crucial to spend time deployed engaging with my audience. And at the very start, these people posting this content need to understand that it's not just great content that gets you people starting to gather around. It doesn't work like that. You have to go and get your audience. So manually, what I mean by that is, I will do a post, and then the first thing I'll do is and this is right at the start, I would then go and DM 3 or 4 allies. Doesn't have to be in the company I work in. 3 or 4 allies who know me well, or like who I get along with, because aren't you meeting new people each day? You should be. Aren't you connecting with new people each day? You should be. And so I have this kind of play top of funnel where every day and these are metrics people can use, every day I connect with 5 to 8 industry peers. They might even be competitors, doesn't matter. We're all in the same place and we're just connecting, top of funnel. I'm adding them to my world, and I'll say hi and we'll connect. We've got things in common. Some of them, nothing happens. Others are monosyllabic. Some don't even bother going on LinkedIn, but you'll always get a few who are like happy to engage and chat. Great. they stick around. And so when I do that post, these in my early weeks and months when I start out, I can tag a couple and say, here's a couple of people who do this really well. Or here's someone or I can say, Jesse, you remember we talked about this recently on our podcast. You know, what do you think? You know, as if like give the audience your expert opinion as well. And so what I'm doing is manually going and saying, like, getting people to come and show up, because what that does is it starts this flywheel spinning, and it does get easier over time. If you can do that, and even if you commit for only like 45, 60 days, you do start getting this traction. And now people are like, oh, I saw your post again, because, you know, every day at the same time you post, and they come and see the content. And what it's doing is nurturing and warming and then creating familiarity, because familiarity is the seed of trust. Because if I see someone enough, I now trust them more. And if I trust them, then I'm more likely to select them for whatever reason, a referral, or to look at for my own role, for instance, or to do some opportunity with, rather than the next guy. So that's kind of where it starts. And it's just crucial to remember that you don't have any entitlement to results because you wrote a great bit of content. And that's infuriating for experts who are like, I'm a PhD in this thing, I've got 30 years experience, I'm getting nothing. Like, one of my clients used to be in charge of the whole brand of Evian, you know, the water drink, and then in turn became a head of brand for like Coke Zero. Serious. But it's not proportionate in terms of the amount of engagement she gets, because she has to play that game a bit first. So I just think it's so important we recognize that. And it feels like forever, because on day one, you're like, so I spent ages writing a post, more time than I would in the future. And I engage with a few people, and my outcome is 5 people have written a comment. And what I'm doing is adding it brick by brick, but it does, to a degree, start to compound. And I appreciate I'm further down the path, but I started there, and it's exactly the same for me. Now I can, if I really wanted to, I could post nonsense, and I would still get a load of people showing up and writing stuff, because I've got this momentum in community engagement. But it's so crucial that you have the piece of content as like your lesson for the day. We're not interested in you sharing other people's ideas. Don't reshare posts. Don't put someone else in front of you. We're following you. You're our thought leader. Write something useful. But let that be the start point for the conversation, not the whole experience, writing a post. It's the start point. And then it's for us to use that as our in to begin engaging with people. If they dare like your post, so thank them with a connection note. If they dare write a comment, amazing, so do the same. If they, in the hour after you post, check your profile views. If they look at your profile, fantastic. Check your followers. Who added themselves as a follower today? That's probably as a result of you writing something compelling. And so like, we're recognizing the people who are drifting past us. And by the very act of engaging with that person individually, they don't just drift past, they start coming into orbit around us. And then they stick around. And of course, when they see, maybe engage, possibly, so some of their network sees it as well. And in turn, some of our network has the gates unlocked, and this post goes to them as well. So it's a very practical way to use this very manual networking at the start. But posting and running is just absurd. It won't work. You can't just go, well, maybe it will just work eventually. No, it doesn't. You literally can post every day forever and not bother doing anything, and you'll still be at zero. It's just completely pointless that way. So I know it's a big monologue, but that's crucial. They're the fundamentals that you do have time for, that you show up every day to do, and you have to hold your breath. But eventually you start getting returns. If you know what you're doing, you can start converting right away. But at the very least, you start building this genuine community of people who actually are interested because you bothered to give them some time, rather than, hey, look, I collected lots of numbers. Because if it was just the volume of followers or just the volume of impressions that mattered, so go buy them. Like with YouTube, like just go buy some followers. You can literally buy followers, but it doesn't. Yeah, it's like indiscriminate. It's like, this is the problem with engagement pods. I will pay money for people who don't care to engage in my post. So like, well, what's the point? Well, it's an insecurity slash vanity reason. But again, not an issue for this podcast, but it's so important to recognize volume is not the game. Actual meaningful relationships is the game, and everyone knows this. I'm not saying anything new.
Yeah, everyone knows that. They know it's fundamentally why we're on social media in the first place, right? We tend to go down these rabbit holes of metrics and algorithms and all of these other things that we can put our attention on. And I'm glad you brought up the fundamentals, and that was a incredibly value-packed segment, Richard. So thank you for that. There are a lot of tactics and a lot of actionable things, right? A lot of actionable things that might escape people's awareness, such as someone likes your post, thank them for it. Show gratitude because they took time out of their day to acknowledge what you wrote. And to double down on that, that's something that LinkedIn pays attention to, first of all. But the interaction part, right? If in the billions of people that are on LinkedIn, you chose to spend time engaging one-on-one with somebody, that says something, right? That means a lot. And that implies that you care about that person beyond just being one of the hundreds of people that may be engaged on their post. So it's spending your time.
LinkedIn will feed them more of your content, and that's what's beautiful about that. It recognizes the interactions. So the next piece of content needs to follow this same thread. So I always say you need to beat the same drum every day. I talk about the same thing all the time, but the point is that it will keep reinforcing my point to people, and it means they stick around more because they liked the initial interaction. But yeah, you've nailed it. That's exactly important, really important.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense too. It sounds like the more human way to do it, and you're rewarded for it, right? So it makes sense strategically, and it is a better way to do business and start conversations.
Well, it's more fulfilling. And the reason why is because you're not doing 50 messages a day and getting no return or relatively no return, so you feel rubbish about it and resent it. You do 5 interactions a day that go deep. And so the whole thing about this is rather than choosing, this is classic discussion these days, is like rather than choosing instant gratification in form of a hollow victory of, relatively speaking, my post got more views today, we actually have to be more stoic. You probably won't get wins for some time. It will feel pointless. It's, like million and one analogies, like going to the gym. You're not going to see returns. You just don't. And then after a while, you start going, oh, actually, I am starting to feel like I look different. It just doesn't happen overnight. And the fact is, you can guarantee that if you do this stuff every day properly, for like, a few months, you start seeing returns, and you'd be stunned how many people are watching. It's crazy, but we just have to recognize that it's deferred gratitude in the form of like the results come later on. Last year, I did a deal with Microsoft, and it started because Microsoft got in touch and said, we've been watching you, which would normally be really worrying if Microsoft said that. Oh, yeah. But we've been watching your content. We're doing this thing with Surface Pro and, Copilot, their AI. We'd love you to be our guy for LinkedIn, in the UK to do a post about it, please. Is it cool if we ship you a Surface Pro and pay you some money to do that? I was like, yeah, cool. But the point is that they'd been watching, silently lurking in the background for months in the past. But also, probably they came across me because each day I'm adding people who represent the ecosystem I want to spend time in. So people probably from Microsoft or from LinkedIn, who's owned by Microsoft, and executives and those kind of people in those spaces. And essentially just recognizing that there's no more individuals anymore. Everyone has a little network around them. And if you connect with Jesse, then you're also connecting potentially with a bunch of his inner circle as well, especially if you decide to, deploy some time with my piece of content. It will then get sent to a few of your people in your ecosystem too. And that is what makes these things happen. So network effects very powerful, but we do have to defer results. We have to expect it's going to take time, as long as we do it properly. And then it's totally worth it. And then after a while, you're like, why would I do it any other way? Because it's really lovely when people reach out and get in touch and want to use you for something, because sure, you're probably really good, but more than anything, it's because despite you maybe being not as good as others, or more expensive, or less available, you're the one they saw. Visibility is very powerful, but as long as it's the right people seeing you in the right way.
Yes, brilliant example too, and congrats on that. That's amazing, and it really does. Yeah, it comes from consistency and building your social capital with intention, with a deliberate focus on what you do, who you help, and your why, and how you show up, right? And that is something that through repetition, people start to build that familiarity, and it makes it much easier to approach you when the time is right. And I think that's something that people get wrong too. It's like, well, I put out this post or this promotion, and only a few people engaged on it, but I have this huge following. Well, maybe the time wasn't right. Maybe they are lurkers, or maybe they just need, more information. They need more trust with you. So it's so important.
People often need far more touch points to feel sufficient familiarity, and therefore trust, to then reach out and do it. It's not that the offers is no good. It's just probably not the right time. So you just have to keep doing it, and it eventually hits right with some people. You can imagine, this is kind of weird, but you can imagine everyone being on this conveyor belt, and eventually they're warm enough that they're like, do you know what? I might get in touch now. And some of them are miles out, and some of them don't need much conveyor belt. But the point is that you move the conveyor belt along towards you through decent content and interaction that makes you a compelling thing to be in orbit around. Otherwise, you're just like everyone else and you don't get results. Simple as that.
Well, I love that we're, finding these common threads, talking about, LinkedIn, having sales conversations, maybe having interview conversations with talent, and it's all centered around this human element, which that's the foundation, right? That's the business that we're in. No matter what business you're in, is human to human interactions, and prioritizing that above all things. And I've been taking notes this whole time, and you mentioned just like, what is social media really for? And if you really think about it, really think about the word social and media, it's a medium through which humans socialize, right? And it is an interface, right? And like you said, about going back to your point about the post, it's not about the post. It's about what feelings the post creates that actually compels people to start a conversation with you.
And that's it. It's like our job is to start conversations. And so when we post, we should even be putting comments in to start conversations in different ways. So maybe you add some footnotes in a comment. Maybe you add a question in another comment. Maybe at the bottom of the post, you've asked a question as well. Like, starting conversations is what it's all about, because if you don't signpost what is next, i.e. an interaction, then people don't necessarily know to do that. It sounds weird, but it's not particularly obvious for people, and often they'll look and then go. So our job is to start conversations, and it's just so amazing. Like, everyone you'll ever do a deal with or ever work with basically is on LinkedIn. And so it's just so exciting that there's that fun code you've got to crack, and you never know what's around the corner. It's really wonderful. So, but you tend to get what you deserve, and people don't like a lot of the answers we've given, although they're obvious, because it's like, oh, that sounds like loads of work. Yeah, sorry, but that's, you tend to get the result if you do it properly, and people don't want to do it properly. They want to pretend that hacks and shortcuts exist, and they don't. They just don't.
And in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm going to spare us from going down the path of talking about AI and how people are attempting to find shortcuts in that way. But this is fantastic. And Richard, as we round out the conversation, what comes to mind is, how can we learn more about you and what you're working on? I know that you are the leader and creator of a program called The Art of Sell.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that and what people would expect from that program?
Thank you. So Art of Sell is very low ticket community. It's $150 a month. That's it. And I give workshops twice a month on stuff like this. But I love being granular and tactical, so you can go and deploy things right away. I did a session this week on framing, so understanding the frame and how you use that in communication and so on. So I'm there doing that. But also every Thursday, aside from when I do one, we have like a premium guest. So we've got where you found me. We've got Chris Doe speaking next week, for instance. We've had the sales trainer for Accenture. We've had the sales and marketing director for Hard Rock International, like the whole thing. We had a regional manager for Louis Vuitton. And so my job is getting the best people I can possibly uncover and very, very deftly sweet talking them into coming to give these masterclasses. And the point of it is to understand truly the elegance and nuance of selling, so that you don't get the ick doing it, nor do you become salesy in the cliche term. It's you understand the cues and the understanding, and maybe there's some mindset pieces you need help with, or negotiation pieces. We had a guy recently who works alongside Chris Voss, so he's a hostage negotiator.
Chris Voss. Yeah,
it was amazing. And so this guy Marshall works with tonality, choice of voice, and all of the physiology that goes with it as well. And so there's a lot of direct learning these things about sales and conversion, but there's also the periphery as well. So I love it because I wanted to create a place where I could learn, and with all love and respect to the quasi experts we have around us in content, it's really great having people speak who have really worked at the highest level. So, from Salesforce, from Coca-Cola, really top level people. And I'm fortunate to have a network where I can have these people speak. But I love it because we're getting people who have operated the highest level, who really do have the receipts, and so the art of sell, there's a big community, and obviously that's lovely. But what I love about it is that it's learning stuff that genuinely helps, rather than like rah motivation, go get it, and I'm sure you'll be fine, or here's how to 10x your LinkedIn profile, because we're here ultimately for acquisition of either a customer or an opportunity or something meaningful. And we've built it with that in mind. So hopefully that makes sense. It's an education place of education, but kind of zero fluff and all intention.
Yes, and I have so much respect for that, and I think that's an incredible resource. And the way I would like to frame it, I am fortunate to have a background as a musician, and what you just mentioned is like the rah hype sales training. To contrast with that, that's like the equivalent of just going to a rock concert and cranking up the volume and getting hyped for the idea of going out and selling.
Absolutely.
What I think this is, which is much better, is like you're going to the symphony.
Yeah.
You're understanding each section and the nuances and the dynamics and the shaping and all of the intricacies that come into having those types of high quality conversations with people. So yeah, if folks are listening, go and check that out. I think that's an incredible resource that you have, and thank you for making sales less salesy and icky for people, Richard.
You're very welcome. It's my crusade to bring some elegance to this world. I really enjoyed it, so thank you so much for having me, and really great questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Richard. Hey folks, Jesse here. I hope you're enjoying Life Designer so far. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're finding it insightful, helpful, or valuable in any way, obviously this probably isn't your first podcast. So the best thing that you can do to help support the show is to subscribe, leave us some feedback and a review, and then share it with somebody. Especially if that someone is going through a significant transition in their life, making a career pivot, and you find a nugget of wisdom that could help them in their journey, go ahead and make that recommendation for them to tune into the show. That's why we're doing this. And beyond that, if you're an organization or a company that aligns with our values and think our audience can benefit from learning more about your message and your business, go ahead and reach out to me directly to ask about sponsorship. You can find me at Jesse Sieff on LinkedIn, or send an email to info@sieffstudios.com at any time, and we'll take it from there. All right. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for tuning in. See you next time. Cheers.